Hey, what is up? Welcome to this episode of the Entrepreneur to Entrepreneur podcast. As always, I'm your host, Brian Lofermento, and I also, as always, am so excited about today's guest because this is someone who I think not only epitomizes what it means to be an entrepreneur, but I think that he is combining all of the coolest things about business into one incredible business and product that he's bringing to the market. He's combining AI with technology while at the same time showing the power of good business and good entrepreneurship to actually solve real life problems, societal problems, cultural problems. There's so much that we're going to unpack with today's entrepreneur. His name is Eubin Kim. Eubin is the founder and CEO of Aidoo. He is also, I love so many aspects of his story. I can so closely relate to it because he's a first generation Korean immigrant. He's the founder that has launched multiple six-figure businesses, and he has valuable experience in tech sales and startups, which inevitably led him to founding a tech company of his own. He's currently building out Aidoo, which is an anti-loneliness app that makes it easier to get out of your room to enjoy the real world, especially in a post-pandemic world. There's so much good that Eubin is doing with his business and the way that he's connecting people. I'm really excited because we all hear about the impact of AI on work and productivity, but what Eubin is doing with Aidoo really sheds a light on how AI can actually enhance our real lives in the real world, not behind computer screens. I'm excited about this one, so I'm not going to say anything else. Let's dive straight into my interview with Eubin Kim. All right, Eubin, I am so very excited that you're here with us today. First things first, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. It's a total honor to be on your podcast.
Eubin, I'll tell you what, our entire team, as soon as we came across your work and the incredible stuff that you're up to with Aidoo, we all hear about AI, but I was like, we need to have him on and talk about how he's actually using it to change the world for the better. So take us beyond the bio first. Who the heck is Eubin? How'd you start doing all these amazing things?
Absolutely. So I'm actually a Korean immigrant, like you said. So I moved here when I was 6 years old. And the question that I loved the most was, when can Eubin come play outside? Or can Eubin come play outside? Because it's such a great question because it leads to so many adventures and deepening friendships. And also for me, I'm also an introvert as well as an immigrant. And you know, if you think about that question, you don't have to do any of the work, right? Your friends are already outside, you're outside playing. And then just growing up with that, I really enjoyed that question. But over time, and especially with the rise of technology, it felt like it was a lot harder to do. And especially with smartphones and people getting addicted to technology and stuff like that, it really seemed like that was going to be a growing problem. And then I, like you said, launched multiple six-figure businesses in my 20s, mostly for other people, either on consulting or marketing. And eventually, I'm a bit of a hippie at heart. So I did van life for about 6 months. I renovated a Chevrolet G30 van, 1995. And, you know, traveled so many national parks, got to experience nature, and then eventually I landed in San Francisco, or the Bay Area to be exact. And then the thing that I realized was, and this was during the lockdowns, I realized that the world had shifted permanently. We went from meeting up face to face primarily to living through our screens. And I experienced firsthand what it would be like to live in a digital first world and how hard it would be to create real world connections. And I really wish there was an app that would help me make new friends with similar interests. And also kind of going back to the previous portion, that would help me do the work of planning the activity. And just thought about that idea for a lot of years. And I thought, man, maybe there's really something here. And especially now seeing all the trends of, you know, screen addiction and people addicted to social media and their smartphones and things like that, I think I recognize that, hey, this is an idea that not only that I need just to get outside and make it easier to connect with friends, but something that the world could benefit from as well.
Yeah, I love that overview. I will say, as a first generation American who is extroverted, I'm always looking to make plans and I don't know who to make them with, Eubin. So I love the fact that your app is not only utilizing technology, but it really is being that bridge and connecting so many different people. We're going to go there, but I didn't anticipate starting here, but you brought it up. So we have no agenda today. We might as well go where the conversation takes us. And Eubin, you talk about you being a hippie at heart. Obviously, I know about your van life background. I'm curious because you have been an entrepreneur at heart for quite some time, being involved in so many different businesses. How has that hippie van life shaped your views of business? Because I'm sure you think about it differently than most.
Yeah, no, I think in terms of that, I think the creativity was a big aspect of it. Like, if I'm being honest, I would just travel to different national parks. I visited Yellowstone, Glacier. There's some beautiful parks in Colorado as well. And I would just play up or post up and essentially play my guitar and just try to think of new things to write about and new experiences to see. Like every day was literally an adventure. I didn't know where I was going to sleep that night. I didn't know what I was going to cook for dinner, but it really gets you to think on your feet. Like if you don't have a spot to stay at night, like you better look up a place and figure out all the details. So it kind of brought spontaneity and a creativity to my work because honestly, it was super relaxing. And also during the pandemic as well, I feel like everyone was freaking out and I'm just out here in the woods playing guitar by myself. But it brought an element of peace and also just kind of a yearning for an easier way to connect because during that van life trip, everyone was quarantining and kept to themselves. And I feel like an element of just human connection was somewhat missing. I did travel with my friends for a large portion of it, but it kind of combined into when I landed in San Francisco and thinking like, man, like there's so many things that I'm interested in and people that I would love to do them with, but it seems like there's a lot of barriers to friendships, relationships, busy schedules, distractions in our lives. And I think honestly, what everyone needs to do nowadays is just get outside, right? And I think part of that entrepreneurship journey is figuring out a way to do that.
Yeah, I love hearing about how all these pieces that in the moment may or may not have felt like they were connected, but they all these roads led to what we're all doing today. So I love hearing that backstory. And I also think it's the culmination of not only what you were doing, but where you were. You were in the Bay Area at a really pivotal time in the way that the tech startup world was working. I mean, emerging technologies are popping up at a faster rate now than probably ever before. Obviously, AI came into the mainstream game, at least within the past few years. ChatGPT has only accelerated that. But Eubin, I want to know, because a lot of people are looking at AI as I can create more content quicker. I can have the social media calendar. You were like, no, I want it to be a social life assistant for me. Where, when you saw the landscape of AI, were you just like, no, this is the way that I want to use it?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. I think, if you look at Facebook, if you look at all the social media networks and things like that. It is great for putting out content, right? Don't get me wrong. I still have the addiction of scrolling through reels for like probably 30 minutes to an hour at a time. And I'm like, this is funny, but I think in some ways it's not adding any value to my life. And I think primarily the value of our life comes through relationships, right? It's the relationships that we build with our family, our friends, our loved ones. And really, those are the memories that we will cherish at the end of our life. No one's really going to remember the meme that you saw and that you were cracking up at. But in terms of really the core human experience, it's those fond memories that you share with other people. And just seeing the trend of younger people and even older people that are consuming this content, and I feel like it's gotten to a point where it's so addicting and so, how would I say it? It's addicting and it's programmed to be addicting that I thought, man, I think technology is being used in the wrong way, right? And then just to flip that on its head, it's kind of keeping us separate as well, right? If you're looking at a meme, then you're not really engaging with anyone. You're just consuming the content. So I thought, what if there was a way that we could use technology in order to create human connections? Thinking about like Facebook before, right? Facebook was designed as an easier way to make new friends and meet new people, but now it's full of, angry posts and statuses and lots of, reels and, short form content that honestly, like just saying like how it's been used in politics and, social media just overall, it seems like it's kind of dividing us as a country. And I think it's easy to forget that we all share the same color on the inside. We all bleed red, right? So and it's those differences that make us special. It's not supposed to be used as a weapon to divide us. So I think with the rise of AI as well, I think people are scared. I think people are wondering, like, man, like, am I going to be out of a job soon? Am I going to be, talking to an AI person for the rest of my life? Which is honestly a scary thought. But if we could actually use AI to bring people closer together, to have better experiences, to create better, more memorable connections, I think that's a worthwhile goal.
Yeah, I really love that overview, especially because there are so many different pieces and considerations in this landscape. You point out how social media has changed. I love when I get those Facebook memories where it says, 15 years ago, this is what you posted. And I was sitting in my dorm room 15 years ago and my posts were like, does anyone want to play FIFA right now? And so that was back then, that was the way we all connected. It was the means of us finding people in our real life geographic spaces to do things with together. I can't tell you, Eubin, the last time that I used it that way, or you're right, I've seen anyone else use it. Now you called it out perfectly. It's all the rants, it's all the politics, and it's not what we need. So walk us down the path of what you're doing with Aidoo, because I think it's incredible. I obviously can see it. I've done the research ahead of today's episode. I'm looking at it on my computer screen, but podcast listeners are probably sitting here saying, Eubin, we're talking about AI potentially replacing humans, but here we are in today's episode talking about it bringing humans together in real life. How does it actually do that? How does Aidoo function?
Yeah, absolutely. And I just thought about it. Well, to kind of take you back, I moved back from San Francisco about a year ago. And then in that year, I thought, I've been making money for other people, right? And then also had all these ideas. And typically when you're in a business, they typically want you to focus on a business. But I've always been a guy with ideas about thinking how to make things better and, just having that entrepreneur spirit, like like the title of this podcast is. But then, I thought, now it's the time to move back to Texas. That idea that I had initially in San Francisco during the lockdown, I thought, there's something there. And in terms of planning a meetup, if you think about all the details, right? There's a lot of things that have to go right when you're planning a meetup. And I'm sure that you use a bunch of different group chats or even like things like Eventbrite and Facebook events in order to plan a meetup. But, there's all these apps and options out there, but I don't think people are happy with them for one reason or the other. I think with texting and Google Maps, right, it still requires a lot of work. It requires you to send out a message, have an idea, have a suggestion. And then in terms of scheduling it, you have to make sure everyone's on the same page. You don't know what the real head count is going to be. And a lot of the times things can end up just falling through, right? And then also in San Francisco during the lockdown, I use the dating apps, right? Because that really was the primary way to connect with other people during the lockdowns. And part of that too links with my journey to sobriety. I didn't want to say like, hey, like I don't want to get drinks. I just want to go outside and go to a park or go on a bike ride. And I realized that, wow, like I think this is a much healthier, more memorable encounter than going to a bar, inviting a person over and just having a drink. So that kind of coalesced into like, how do I make it easier for people to connect outside? And it just led down that path of like, okay, there's certain details that you have to get right in order to plan a perfect meetup. That's getting the right location, getting the scheduling down, confirming, and then just enjoying the event and also sharing the photos. And I thought, why not put that into a all-in-one comprehensive application that takes care of that entire social experience for you?
Yeah, it's so cool hearing you talk about this in real time here on the air, because I can see how your thought process has manifested into the various features that are available within what you're doing with Aidoo. And it's one of the headlines on your website. I love it because hearing you talk about it, it's clear why you have arrived at this important functionality of activities included, no work required. And then there's this really nice slider of, if you want to get pizza together, if you want to go on a bike ride together, if you want to go camping together. There's so many different things that we as humans can do, but so many people fall into. For me, again, as someone who doesn't drink, just like you, I don't want to go to a bar. I'd much rather play chess in a coffee shop. Like, there's 500 other things I'd rather do. So talk to us about that, because people might be thinking, oh, it's just another app that is connecting people, but you're also talking about what are we going to do? Walk us through that functionality.
Yeah, absolutely. I think just like you hit it on the head, I feel like people get trapped into what everyone else is doing, right? It's like, oh, I want to go do this, or I saw this on social media, so I want to do that. But really, everyone is so interesting in their interests, their hobbies, the things that they love, enjoy doing outside. But it's harder to connect on those things because it takes a lot to get to know a person, right? It takes a lot of time to eventually become friends, eventually like meet up and plan things. And just like you said, like you play chess, I play chess as well. Like that's an incredible bonding opportunity that might not be relevant right off the bat. But if you're able to show that you're interested in, let's say, biking or chess or going to, a Korean restaurant, or one of the things that is included in the app as well is fitness, right? I feel like so many people love going to the gym, but when I go to the gym, I see mostly people working out by themselves, right? So if you're able to kind of create that community around activities, then you can contribute to a healthier, happier society, I think, as a whole.
Yeah, Eubin, it's so much fun hearing you talk about this. I already know one day when you and I are in the same geographic location, we're going to bike to a Korean barbecue place and we're going to play chess while we're there. So let's do it. But hearing you talk about these things, I also know that as much as you love what you're doing, you also love the business aspect of it. You have been an entrepreneur at heart. You said entrepreneur, but I'm going to elevate you straight into the entrepreneurship category. But I know that a part of what you're doing is it's tough to build a user base on any new thing, especially when it is a new idea. And for someone like you, who's an idea factory, you have no shortage of those. But then the business problem to solve then becomes, how do I get as many people on there? And the network effect is something that we've all heard about inside of business classrooms. We've heard different ways of going about it. Like Uber, for example, launched in a specific city and then they slowly expanded into others. Talk to us about your growth plans and navigating the network effect, because for so many businesses, it's hard to get that right.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think really there's so many different communities that you can tap into, I think, with the concept of the app. And, the cool thing is we do have customers pre-MVP, meaning that, there are people that just love the idea and they're willing to pay money with it. And the cool thing is the MVP is being built right now. And by the time that this episode airs, people will be able to download it and experience Aidoo for themselves. But really, I think organizations can benefit from this. There's a lot of organizations and businesses, and they're kind of lacking that sense of community that that used to exist before COVID. Whenever companies existed before, that you would have like the water cooler talks and your coworker sitting right next to you, and there's a lot of camaraderie and community that just comes by being in the shared space together. But we've missed that from work from home. And part of my pitch is now it takes work to get away from home, right? I think with all our screens and just the endless amount of content that's available, we feel tired, we're distracted, and I think businesses, I think organizations, they need a more an easier way to build community within that organization. And right now I'm partnering with some businesses in the Austin area, as well as some prospective churches and sobriety groups and things like that, so that we can really just create that sense of community, make it easier for people to connect both in that community and outside of that community as well.
Yeah, which leads me right into, I love this growth strategy that it's so clear that you're really embracing. Is you call them Aidoo ambassadors, which is your users in and of themselves are also marketers for your solution, for your product, because we win when other people also start using it. I mean, I relocated here to Tampa, Florida a few years ago from Los Angeles, and I had to start from scratch from a social perspective. All the things I like to do. I don't know anyone who plays tennis here. I don't know anyone who just wants to post up in a coffee shop and play chess. I didn't know these people. And so the more people in my local area that are using it, the more I win. Talk to us about that approach, because it's clear to me that people are at the root of so much of your growth plans and the way that you view this working, which is fun to talk about in the context of a tech company.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think really it depends on a lot of different things, but I thought, the best way to create an app and market it is to show how people actually use it, right? And it's just like you said, whenever you move into a new city, you don't know too many people and you want to explore, right? There's all these new restaurants, there's all these new sites that you want to see, there's all these activities you want to do, but then it's honestly still, it's kind of hard to go to a fancy restaurant all by yourself and just enjoy it like that, right? So I think people have this inherent desire to explore the outside world because we live in an inside world, but not a lot. It's hard to get coordinated, and especially when you're fresh, it's hard to say hey, we just met. Do you want to go do this thing together, right? So there's some vulnerability that comes with that. There's all that work that I mentioned before. So by using the Aidoo ambassadors, and the cool thing is anyone can become an Aidoo ambassador. You just have to fill out the survey on our website, but it allows people to showcase their diverse interests, right? So if you're a fitness fanatic, or I say on the website, it's like a pizza amigo, right? It's people that share those passions with each other, then it'll be incredibly easy for you to find people and also to schedule those activities on your app. And by showcasing that with the world, you offer a source of income to these ambassadors, as well as spreading the message about, hey, there's an easier way to connect outside.
Yeah, listeners, I'm going to call this out for all of you right now. Hearing the way that Eubin talks about this stuff, you hear how much he has thought about the mental side of his customers' journeys. Is when you talk about those vulnerabilities of opening up socially, those are things that the fact that you as a founder are already thinking about these means that your product is even stronger, even better because of that fact. Now, of course, listeners, part of the advantage here is that if you're serving a prior version or current version of yourself, you have a unique understanding of your ideal customers. So Eubin, I love the way that you're building all of this into the app, but I have to ask you, as someone who has worked inside of so many different successful businesses at all different growth phases, what's been the challenging or maybe something that's been surprising for you as you've been going on here? Because this is no small goal and mission that you've taken on board.
I know. And I think to become from sales and a non-technical founder to say I'm building an app, it was pretty ambitious. But I think the hardest part is, as you probably well know, entrepreneurship, especially when you just have an idea, right? It is a lonely journey, right? And you can tell people about the app and it's hey, it's a great idea, but then no one really knows what you're going to go through unless you link up with fellow founders or, you find those business contacts that have gone through that process with you. But I think the thing that's really driving me at this point is envisioning a world where people are more connected. And whenever I meditate every morning, part of my meditation is, imagine the future and imagine everything has gone right. And, what does that look like for you? And for me, it wasn't oh, you're going to start, a huge successful company. It was people coming up to me and saying like, hey, I made friends through your app, right? Or, hey, like I met my wife through your app. We met like biking together and thank you so much. So I think just starting with that small vision of, hey, I'm just bringing people together and making those connections easier for people. And also just being motivated by it's kind of interesting. It's like seeing what people are struggling with online. And, I scroll through Reddit, I scroll through social media, through threads, through Twitter, and it seems like there's a huge need for this type of solution. People are like, hey, I'm in Austin. I don't know anyone here. Or if you go on Reddit, it's like, do people still make friends anymore? Like this is something that, I never would have thought that, in the future, this is something that we would be dealing with. But, technology is only growing more or growing faster at an exponential rate. And, I feel like more and more like the apps that we're using, they're keeping us on there, right? So for me, the overarching mission and what pushes me through those hard times of like, man, like I have to learn how to code now. I have to like make content, which, something it's kind of foreign to me, but it's like, hey, this is for the overarching mission of fixing modern loneliness and boredom. And if you can get people to connect in a happy, healthy, positive way, then you've done your job.
Yeah, I love hearing you talk about all these different things to focus on, but they all come back to that core mission. And it leads me to ask you, I'm so fascinated from just speaking to you, not only through what you do, but also entrepreneur to entrepreneur. Let's talk about those either inflection points or milestones. I'm so curious to hear the way that your mind works and how you look forward, because I know that right now at the time of recording, you've got a lot on your plate. You obviously have a closed program right now. You've got over 1,000 people just last week alone signed up for your wait list. So the need is definitely there, and people are going to be chomping at the bit for this to go public. But not just speaking about the technical side of launching this thing into the world, but even just the growth, the impact side of things. What are those milestones or inflection points that your mind goes to and you say, you know what, let's just get here and then we'll focus on getting there? I'd love to tap into your entrepreneurial mind and how you think about that stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I think part of being an entrepreneur is having ADD, but using it in a constructive way, right? Like I was diagnosed ADD and I didn't even know what it was until I was diagnosed with it. But you have to be interested in a lot of different things. And kind of looking back at my own journey, I first started in sales, then I went into marketing, and then, eventually landed in tech sales and learned like the corporate structure. My first job as an SDR, my tech sales job in San Francisco was for a financial company. So that's when I got to learn all the different aspects of the finances of a business and figuring out what was important metrics and things like that. And looking back, it's, you don't really see the roadmap looking forward. You're like, well, I'm a fintech SDR and then eventually like a healthcare account executive. But then looking back, it all connects. The dots connect, right? That's the only way you can connect the dots is by looking back, because when you're in the thick of it, you don't really know the next step, but you realize like, oh, I've built a website before. I know how to talk to people. I know how to build interest. And then using those lessons, those pieces of knowledge and those tools that you learn and how to use them effectively, and then just taking it piece by piece, right? You don't need to start with building an app like right away. First, you need to gauge the interest, see if there's people that are interested in your idea. And then once you have that validation, then you can move on to the next phase. And then that's when I started, developing the screens and figuring out what features that people would like and how to reduce the friction of going outside and what really matters to people when they have a great experience outside. And then the more validation you get, the more users that you get on your side, then you can actually release the product, which is, it's really cool. I feel like, a lot of people have that, that desire of like, man, I really want to build out that idea. But then this is the first time that I've thought of an app, and then now it's actually coming to life. I think now it's going to be at that stage. And then, of course, it all depends on the user, right? It depends on the customer. So after this point, once the MVP is released, just taking their feedback and thinking, hey, okay, you had this idea right off the beginning. Now it's just listening to your customer, listening to what the feedback is about, and then really gearing it for them.
Yeah, I love the way that you transparently shared that. I feel like too many people, we get caught up in that cliched business school advice. I remember professors used to always tell us, you got to have that 3, 5, 10-year plan. And the truth is, none of it's going to happen according to that plan. You can set a guideline. I love how you've shared with us today. Really, I think that your guideline, your North Star is really the impact that you want to make and the mission that you're on. And I think that there's inevitably going to be twists and turns along the way, and you'll figure it out when you get there. And I think that that's some real life entrepreneurial insights that listeners, no matter where you are in your growth journey, this is the stuff that really guides us along. And it's a mindset that goes along with that growth journey. So I love hearing you share that with us in such a transparent way, because this is the real stuff, which is why we enjoy having this show and having incredible guests on like you. But I also love asking this question at the end of episodes because I have no idea how you're going to answer that. And that is boiling it down to one actionable takeaway or one piece of advice that you want to have, knowing that our listeners are at all different growth stages in their own businesses. You've been in it. You're taking on a big mission yourself. What's that one thing that you hope everyone walks away from today's episode with?
Do you mind if I share 2? Is that okay?
Oh, we will always take a bonus one. Lay it on us.
Awesome. I appreciate that. So I would say the first one is think about problems, right? I think people think of a solution and then they think like, oh, this is the perfect solution. But then really you can have a great feature or a great product, but then you really have to fix a core problem that users are having. And then honestly, for me, I think it was a personal problem, right? I'm an immigrant that grew up, and I really like that question of, can we go play outside? But it seems like that question faded away in the childhood. And also I just don't like planning meetups. I know people do love doing that, but for me, I just love attending and experiencing those events. So if you have a problem that you're currently dealing with, or if you recognize a problem in society right now, then marketing becomes a lot easier, right? Then you just have to talk about your own experiences and then just kind of fine tune it as you go along. And by replicating what your pain points are, or recognizing the other pain points, and then just figuring out which demographics that you'll lead into, the whole process of finding the right customers, finding the right users becomes a lot easier. And then the second point would be to find the reason, right? So you have the problem, you have the solution, but there's going to be moments when things get hard. There's going to be moments when you're like, man, like I tried building an app, like I never would have thought that I could have done it like a year ago, but just having that vision of what are you actually trying to accomplish? What is the end goal? How does it benefit people? How does it benefit the world, right? And if you're able to find that vision that kind of carries you through those hard times, carries you through, the moments of doubt, the moments of self-reflection, am I doing this right? Then I've realized that through overcoming those hurdles, you become stronger in the process. Your thinking becomes more clear, and you build a resiliency that's going to serve you for the rest of your life.
Yes, really well said. And I said at the top of today's episode that you are the epitome of so many aspects of what it means to be an entrepreneur. And you have so delivered here today with the real stuff that I don't think we talk about openly enough. So I really appreciate you sharing all of those insights with our listeners. I also know that as much as we talked about Aidoo here today, people are going to be itching to see it in action. I love the way you lay it out on your website. It's so beautiful, showing what the inside looks like, all the different features and functionality. And I know that by the time this episode airs, there's only going to be so much more for people to check out. So drop those links on us. Where should listeners go from here?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're currently MVP right now. And I think for an entrepreneur that's looking to see what an MVP would look like, as well as enjoy the benefits of an easier way to go outside, all you need to do is sign up for our waitlist. That's at www.idoo.ai. And then in terms of our socials, I'll be releasing some content about, kind of like a founder-led video strategy of like, hey, here's what I do on a daily basis. Currently working on that. I do have some clips to process, but if you want to follow that journey of me building this app, then our socials are going to be at aidoo.ai.
Yes, listeners, you already know the drill. We're making it as easy as possible for you to find those links down below, wherever it is that you're tuning into today's episode. You can find Aidoo at AIDOO. That's Aidoo, AIDOO.ai. You'll find that link down below, so you can just click right on through, no matter where it is that you're tuning in. Otherwise, Eubin, on behalf of myself and all of our listeners worldwide, thanks so much for coming on the show today.
Absolutely, man. This has been so much fun, and thank you for the opportunity.